They told me the ocean was quiet here, but I've been hearing it whisper my name for weeks. Maybe it's just the pressure, or maybe it knows everything I've done. I thought I was alone down here until the floor beneath me whispered back. I shouldn't say whispered, not really, but that's the only word I can think of for the sound that pulses through the hull at odd hours low, vibrating like the ocean itself is alive and impatient. I'm not supposed to hear it. No one is. They tell me it's just the turbines, the pressure settling, equipment groaning. Maybe it is. Or maybe it's something else. Something I've already disturbed. I've tampered with the sensors. Just a little, nothing dangerous. That's what I keep telling myself. I'm a maintenance engineer at Station Abyssal 7, a deep-sea power hub nestled 10,000 feet below the surface. Isolation is the first rule. Here second is obedience. Third, apparently, is silence. Out here, you notice every creak, every sigh of the structure, every subtle shiver of metal. And lately, something else. Red lights strobe along the corridors, painting the still walls in brief bursts of blood-like color. The pipes hum and groan, echoing through my boots as I walk. I swear I can see shadows moving beneath the glass viewports, rippling in the black water outside. But that's impossible. The water is thick, almost solid at this depth. Nothing alive could move down there. Nothing but the station, the machinery. And the first time I mentioned the vibrations to Derek, the station supervisor, he just shook his head. "Don't go poking around where you shouldn't," he said, eyes flicking to the access panels I'd been working on. His voice was calm, measured, but there was a tension in his jaw that didn't escape me. He doesn't know I've overridden the pressure monitors. I needed to see the readings myself. No one else can see it. Not yet. I find myself walking those corridors at night when the station is quiet, though it never really is. The hum of the turbines never stops. The lights flicker. Sometimes I pause near a viewport, staring out at the abyss, feeling the pressure in my chest, not the literal kind, but something else, heavier. The kind that presses on your thoughts, your memories, your secrets, and the sound. It's subtle at first, like distant footsteps on steel. Then it grows, almost rhythmic, pulsing in sync with my heartbeat. I tell myself it's the station. I repeat it enough that I almost believe it. But deep down, I know I've heard it before. The sensors, before Derek, before anyone knew I was down here. Sometimes I imagine the creature beneath the floor, though I never see it. I can't. It's wrong to look too closely. But it exists in the periphery, a shift in sonar readings I can't explain, a shadow that lingers just beyond the glass, patterns in the lights that move when I'm not watching directly. I mention none of this to Derek. He doesn't need to know. No one does. In the control room. The blinking panels and tangled wires feel almost alive. I tap at a sensor, adjusting it slightly, and the vibration underfoot changes, like the station is reacting to me. My own actions ripple through this metallic, watery world, and sometimes I wonder if I've awakened something I shouldn't have. Or maybe it was already awake, and I was just late to notice. Derek interrupts my thoughts with a quiet sigh, standing in the doorway, watching me hover over the panels. "You're pushing limits again," he says. His tone is more warning than anger, but I can hear the tension. I nod, pretending compliance. I always nod. I've learned to nod here. And still, the whispers press against the walls of my mind. Though the station is supposedly empty, I can't tell if it's guilt or fear anymore. Maybe both. I hide the modifications I made, the little tweaks that could have catastrophic consequences. It's my secret, mine alone. That's the rule down here. Survive, adjust, ignore the tremors. Pretend the whispers aren't speaking your name. Yet at night, when I lie in the cramped quarters, the station's silent except for that ever-present pulse. I wonder if I'm imagining it all. Maybe Derek's right. Maybe it's just the equipment. Maybe I'm just unraveling. But even as I try to convince myself, I can't shake the certainty that something else is down there, beneath the ocean floor, waiting. And it isn't indifferent. It's aware. It's watching Dot by the time I return to my bunk. The vibration is steady now, a heartbeat under the hull. I lay down, eyes wide, staring at the ceiling. The red emergency lights flash briefly in the corner, casting shadows that twist like reaching fingers. I tell myself sleep will erase the fear, erase the whispers. But deep down, I know it won't. Something is alive down there. Something beneath the ocean floor. And I have no idea how much longer I can pretend I'm not part of it. I started hearing my own voice through the intercom, but it wasn't me, or at least it wasn't the me I know. I swear, that was the first time I realized the station itself might be lying to me, or maybe I was lying to myself. The hum of the turbines had always been a background I could ignore, but now it felt purposeful, like a rhythm I had no control over. At first, I thought I was imagining things, a crackle in the intercom, a misfired sensor reading. But when it happened again, clear as my own confession, I froze. Hey, hello. I whispered into the empty corridor, hoping Derek or anyone would respond. Silence, thick and suffocating. But the intercom hissed, a distorted version of my words, repeated in that low, gravelly tone I didn't recognize. Hello, hello. I wasn't alone. That's when Lila arrived. She's the station's senior technician, brought in to replace someone who vanished a few months ago. She's efficient, stubborn, and annoyingly. Skeptical, the perfect foil to my paranoia. Her first words to me were sharp. Stop wandering the halls at night. You'll drive yourself insane. I laughed, but it was hollow. I'm hearing things, I admitted, lowering my voice. Not. Just the usual creaks, voices. She raised an eyebrow. Voices? Are you serious? I don't know, I said, but it's happening. On the intercom, on the sensors. Something's moving beneath the ocean floor. I can feel it. Lila didn't touch the intercom. She didn't move toward the panels. She just looked at me like she was measuring my sanity against the black water outside. Pressure plays tricks. Depth makes everything sound alive. You've been alone too long, that's all. I wanted to believe her. I wanted desperately to believe her. But the sonar readings didn't lie. Small blips, tiny shifts in the sediment below, repeated in patterns too deliberate to be random. I had checked them myself, and my modifications had confirmed it. Something was moving down there, something large enough to disturb the ocean floor and maybe even the station itself. Red emergency lights flickered across the metal walls as we stood in silence, watching the monitors. The sound beneath our feet grew, a pulsing vibration that seemed to react to our movements. I reached out, tapping the hull lightly. The vibration changed. My pulse quickened. It was as if the station itself was aware of my curiosity. Lila's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. Stop. Don't touch anything else. You're going to make it worse. I ignored her warning. Part of me wanted to see the patterns, the impossible movements, the subtle shadows shifting under the ocean's black curtain. Part of me wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. That night, I stayed at the monitors, tracking the sonar blips. Every time I blinked, the shapes seemed to move closer, always just beyond direct detection. Sometimes I thought I could hear breathing, a slow, deliberate exhale that didn't match either of us. Lila left the control room after, her shift leaving me alone with the pulsing hum and the whispers of my own voice echoing back at me. I tried to call Derek on the internal line. No answer, just static, and then faintly, I see you. I jolted back. My fingers flew over the panel, but the line was dead again. I kept telling myself it was feedback, interference, my imagination. But every instinct I had screamed otherwise. Whatever or whoever was down there, it was aware of me. Watching, waiting that sleep became impossible. I stayed in the cramped bunk, staring at the red emergency light in the corner. I could hear everything, the subtle vibrations, the clatter of pipes, the far-off groan of the turbines, but I also heard Lila's voice from the hallway when she wasn't there, repeating things she'd never said. Stop. Don't touch. It's awake. I've always been careful to hide the modifications I made to the sensors. Only I know how they respond to vibrations, how they can exaggerate movements, amplify blips. But now, I wonder if the station is reacting on its own. Maybe it doesn't need my interference. Maybe it's alive and my tampering just invited it to notice me sooner. By the time morning came, if you could call the muted red light. Morning, I realized something terrifying. Lila wasn't just skeptical, she was cautious for a reason. And I wasn't sure if I could trust her or even myself. Every creak, every shadow, every whisper through the intercom chipped away at my certainty. The ocean outside, thick and impossibly dark, seemed to press against the hull with every passing minute. I could feel it, a living weight, urging me to do something or maybe to stop. And I knew, with a chilling clarity, that the first crack had appeared not just in the station structure, but in my own mind. I wanted to warn Lila, to tell her everything, but I couldn't. Some truths can't be shared, not without consequences. Some truths, especially the ones that live beneath the ocean floor, have a way of making people disappear. And that's when I saw it, or thought I did. A faint movement in the sonar readings, closer, more deliberate than ever before. Something big, something aware. And it was heading straight for us. The hum of the turbines grew louder, almost deafening. My pulse raced. I had no idea if I was imagining it or if the creature beneath the floor was finally showing itself. I should have stopped. I should have listened to Lila, but I didn't. I couldn't. And that's when the station whispered my name again. I never thought I'd find it, but there it was, hiding where no one should ever go. I don't know how to explain the feeling when the ocean floor seemed to split open beneath me. It wasn't an earthquake or a tremor. I would have felt those. It was deliberate, calculated. A gap, a cavity, something unnatural. The sonar picked it up first, a faint hollow that shouldn't exist. I double-checked my modifications, convinced. I distorted the readings, but the gap was real. Lila didn't come with me when I suited up for the dive. I didn't tell her I was going. I couldn't. She'd have stopped me. She's efficient, careful, and rational too rational. I needed to see it myself. Needed to see the patterns, the shadows, the movement that had been stalking us through the monitors. The water outside was impossibly dark, blacker than anything I'd imagined. My headlamp cut a thin cone of light into the abyss, illuminating nothing but suspended particles that danced like they had a mind of their own. I adjusted my grip on the control tether and slowly descended toward the cavity. My pulse pounded in my ears, matching the hum of the turbines echoing from the station above. The closer I got, the more the sonar readings shifted. The blips multiplied, forming a pattern that was too deliberate to be random. And then I saw it. A shadow moving beneath the floor, enormous and slow, like a predator circling its prey. I couldn't make out details, only shape long, sinuous, impossibly fluid. My instincts screamed to retreat, but I couldn't. Not yet. That's when I remembered Mark, the diver who disappeared months ago. He'd been sent to inspect a minor leak, and no one heard from him again. Derek never talked about it, but the whispers in the crew quarters, hushed conversations, the way Lila avoided eye contact, I pieced it together. Something had claimed him, something that no one wanted to acknowledge. And now, I was closer than anyone had dared. I hovered near the cavity, trying to reconcile what I saw with what I believed. The shadow wasn't constant, it seemed aware of my presence, retreating when I approached, returning when I hesitated. My hand shook as I tapped the sonar panel, tracking its movements. The readings were unlike anything in the manual. A living, breathing thing beneath the floor. Something that shouldn't exist. My mind tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was an undiscovered species. Maybe it was some geological anomaly. But deep down, I knew. Whatever it was intelligent, observing, patient, and it knew I was there. Tried to call Derek again through the internal line. Silence. Just static, and then faintly, a hiss. My own voice distorted. You shouldn't be here. I staggered back, heart hammering. The line went dead. My headlamp flickered, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw movement at the edge of my vision mark, or something wearing his shape. My stomach twisted, nausea and fear colliding. I told myself I was hallucinating, that the stress, the isolation, and the guilt were playing tricks on me. But the cavity below didn't lie. The sonar didn't lie. The shadow didn't lie. I started mapping the area, trying to understand the anomaly. Every shift, the pressure in the suit felt heavier than usual. Not physical pressure, it's always immense at this depth, but something else. A mental weight, a suffocating awareness that I wasn't the only conscious thing in this void. The ocean outside, pressed against me, thick, alive, watching. Then I saw it more clearly. A long curling appendage, or maybe a shadow that suggested one slithering along the cavity wall. It moved with purpose, deliberate and almost teasing, as if testing me, assessing me. My hand hovered over the camera controls, but I hesitated. I couldn't look directly. I shouldn't, but I couldn't resist either. The thought of Mark came again, stark and undeniable. He hadn't just vanished. He had been claimed, drawn down into this cavity by curiosity or mistake, and I could feel it in the water, the residue of him, the echo of his fear. My chest tightened. Every instinct screamed at me to ascend, to get back to the station, to leave the abyss and its secrets behind. But I didn't. Not yet. A sudden pulse shook the floor beneath me, stronger than any vibration I'd felt before. My headlamp wobbled. My tether tugged. The shadow retreated, but only slightly, as if it wanted me to follow. And I realized the terrifying truth. It wasn't hiding. It was waiting, patient, intelligent, aware. And now it knew I was here. I turned toward the ascent, ignoring the pull of the cavity. Every meter upward felt like resistance, not from water, not from pressure, but from awareness itself. It was there, in the vibrations, the shadows, the sonar readings. It was alive, and it had marked me by the time I breached the upper levels and re-entered the station. My hands were shaking, and my suit's metal hull felt heavier than ever. Lila was waiting, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "What did you see?" she asked. I wanted to tell her everything, but I couldn't. Not the shadow, not Mark, not the truth. Nothing, I said, and she didn't press further. Not yet, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. Something beneath the ocean floor was alive, something aware, and it was only a matter of time before it reached through the pressure, through the hull, through me. The alarms didn't wake me, they whispered, calling my name, laughing with the ocean beneath the hull. I should have left when I had the chance. I should have listened to Lila, to the pulsing warning in my chest, to the rational voice screaming. That something alive, something patient and intelligent, was beneath the floor, watching. But I didn't. I stayed. And now, everything was falling apart. The station shuddered violently, lights flickering from white to red in staccato bursts. The turbines screamed. a high-pitched keening that rattled my bones and made the hull groan like it was being torn apart from the inside. Every vibration I had once dismissed now felt sentient, a heartbeat in sync with mine, mocking. Aware, I tried to contact Derek. Static. The intercom hissed again, my voice distorted. It's too late. It knows. Lila appeared in the corridor, her suit smeared with sweat, eyes wide. You shouldn't have gone down there, she shouted over the alarms. We need to evacuate. I wanted to argue, to explain, to tell her that it wasn't just under the floor. It was everywhere. But words failed me. The red emergency lights cast long, writhing shadows that seemed to reach for us. Pipes groaned and burst, spraying water that hissed as it touched the heated metal floors. I stumbled, the station tilting as if the ocean itself were bending the structure. Something moved outside the viewports, something enormous. I couldn't see clearly through the black water, only a vague shape undulating, stretching impossibly long, then coiling back into the darkness. I caught glimpses of what looked like appendages, shadows brushing the hull like fingers testing their grip. My stomach turned, nausea and fear colliding. This was no hallucination. This was alive, aware, waiting for us. We have to get to the escape pods, Lila shouted, grabbing my arm. The grip was firm but trembling. I nodded, barely processing. Every step we took, the station reacted, corridors flexing, walls vibrating, the lights bending shadows into monstrous forms. The ocean was pressing down, alive and insistent. I tried to rationalize, telling myself it was pressure, structure failure, equipment malfunction. But the sonar readings I had once manipulated now seemed autonomous, pulsing in patterns I couldn't control. Something had learned, adapted. Something had been waiting for me, and now it was claiming its territory. A sudden roar, or was it a vibration in my skull, shook the station. Lila cried out, pulling me down as the ceiling above cracked. Debris rained down, metal splintering like toothpicks under immense force. I pressed myself against the wall, feeling the pressure not just on my body, but in my mind. Every pulse, every whisper, every vibration now screamed my name. My guilt, my trespass. I thought of Mark, the missing diver. The shadow of him, or something wearing his form, flashed in my mind. I remembered the echo of his fear, the unspoken truth that no one had wanted to admit, and I knew. It was coming for us. Water surged into the lower levels, cascading like a river through the corridors. I could feel the station tilting, sinking, folding beneath the weight of the ocean and something else. Something aware. My breath came in shallow, rapid gasps as I followed Lila through the twisting halls, every step resisted by unseen force, as if the hull itself was alive. I see it, I whispered, though I didn't know if I meant the creature, or my own mind unraveling. Shadows writhed along the walls, sonar blips danced erratically, and the vibrations pulsed in unpredictable patterns. I wanted to reach the escape pod. I wanted to survive, but every instinct screamed that survival might be impossible. We reached the pod bay, but one pod was gone, smashed, the outer hull torn. Lila screamed. It's already here. Her words cut through the alarms, though I couldn't tell if she meant the creature or the inevitable collapse of the station itself. I glanced back at the shattered corridor, and for a fraction of a second, I thought I saw Mark's form more. The thing wearing his shape coiling around the beams, watching, waiting. My stomach twisted violently. My suit alarms blared, warning of structural failure, water ingress, oxygen loss. The pod shuddered violently as I climbed inside, sealing the hatch with trembling hands. Lila followed, gasping, eyes wide with terror. We can't leave it here, she whispered, though I didn't know if she meant the station, the creature, or me. I had no answers, only fear. only the oppressive weight of knowing that whatever was beneath the floor was aware of everything. I'd done everything I'd hidden, the pod ejected. Outside, the black ocean swallowed the station, light from our tiny vessel barely piercing the void. I stared through the viewport, trying to comprehend the enormity of it. The shadows moved something immense, coiling beneath the wreckage, waiting, watching, patient, and then, as we drifted, I thought I heard my own voice again. Faintly, "You can't escape." I wanted to believe it was hallucination. I wanted desperately to believe it was just guilt. But even as we rose toward the distant light of the surface, I couldn't shake the certainty. The ocean knows. The abyss remembers. And whatever lives beneath the floor, it will not forget me. I try to sleep now in the relative safety of the pod, but the vibrations persist. Sometimes I wake thinking I hear whispers, shadows stretching across the viewport, pulsing with intent. Lila sleeps fitfully beside me, unaware or perhaps wisely ignoring the truth I carry. And I wonder, in the dark, whether I was ever alone at all. The ocean is patient. The creature beneath the floor is patient. And I am not sure I will survive the waiting. Story number 2. When we were told it was just a routine cable repair, I didn't know they'd never come back. And I'm not sure I did either. I still don't know if what I saw down there was real, and I'm not sure I want to. That was the first thought that hit me as our small dive boat hummed quietly over the dark abyss. They told us it was just another underwater cable repair routine, boring, unremarkable. Routine, they said, but I could feel it the moment my fins sliced through the surface, the weight of something watching, waiting beneath the water's black mirror. I'm Alex, and I was the team leader that day, though I'm not sure I deserve the title. The crew consisted of 3 of us: Mark, our veteran diver with more bravado than sense; Lena, careful, precise, tense; and me, fumbling the balance between confidence and guilt, the one left to tell the story, or at least part of it. The descent began quietly. Our dive lights cut weakly through the water, illuminating a world that seemed to breathe around us. Murky shadows stretched and shifted, twisting like smoke. At first, it was just the usual currents, the pull of the sea against the hull of our bodies, but soon, subtle things began to unsettle me. Faint clicks and whispers echoed in the distance. I looked at Lena, expecting her to notice, to acknowledge. But she didn't, or maybe she did and chose silence. Do you guys feel that? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm through the regulator. Feel what? Mark grinned, the bubbles spilling over his mask. He always laughed at my paranoia, like fear was a weakness, and he wasn't about to be burdened with mine. Nothing. It's probably nothing. I swallowed the words before they sounded like a confession, but deep down, I wasn't sure if it was nothing. Something brushed my shoulder, or maybe it didn't, and my stomach twisted. We moved slowly toward the cable, our lights bobbing like dim stars in a black sky. Lena checked our gauges obsessively, counting down the meters, muttering under her breath about oxygen and decompression limits. Mark, meanwhile, was already ahead, touching the cable, tapping it, laughing at some invisible joke. I wanted to warn him, to tell him to slow down, but my voice caught in my throat. Then came the silt. A fine, ghostly cloud stirred from the seabed. As Mark reached the junction point, I swam closer, but the particles clung to the light, distorting everything. I watched Mark's figure disappear behind the drifting haze, a shadow among shadows, twisting in the murky water. I called for him. My voice bounced back in the regulator as bubbles and silence swallowed my words. Mark? Mark? I shouted again, though part of me didn't really expect an answer. Lena's hand brushed mine, grounding me. He's fine. He's fine, she said, but her voice trembled. I wanted to believe her, I truly did, but something in the way the soap moved slow, deliberate, like it was alive, made my stomach knot. I turned to follow him, and he wasn't there. Not anywhere. It was as if the water had swallowed him whole. My mind screamed that he would surface, that he would reappear. But the silence lingered. I swallowed hard and told myself he'd gone back up. That was the truth, wasn't it? At least that's the story I've been clinging to ever since. The cable itself looked wrong, more than damaged. A dark film clung to it, slimy, shifting in patterns it couldn't identify. I tried to focus on the repair, to ignore the whispers. The prickling feeling crawling up my spine. The strange pressure that wasn't just the water pressing on my chest. It was heavier, different. Something watched. Or maybe I watched myself, remembering choices I didn't want to make. I noticed the small details I should have ignored, the way Lena's light flickered erratically, how shadows seemed to mirror my own movements, but delayed, hesitant. I tried to laugh it off, joking about my imagination, about stress, about too many hours underwater. But laughter dies quickly in dark water. Just finish the repair, I whispered to myself. It's routine, nothing more. Routine. Lies are easy underwater. They float around you, clinging like bubbles, and if you tell them enough times, you begin to believe them. I convinced myself that Mark had surfaced. Lena was fine. Everything would be fine. Yet every instinct screamed that it wasn't. I reached the junction, tools shaking in my hands, and a sudden tug, gentle, deliberate, pulled against my suit. My heart raced, but when I turned, nothing. Just the cable, black and silent, and the silk curling like smoke around the edges of my light. Minutes passed, maybe hours, I don't remember. Time loses meaning in the deep. All I knew was that we were 3, now 2, now 1. And the water whispered, a voice I couldn't identify. Was it Lena, Mark, or something else entirely? I called for Mark one last time, and the answer was the same as before. Nothing. Not a bubble, not a shimmer, not a sound that could be traced to a human form. Only the dark and the cable and the oppressive feeling of being watched. And then, just as I was forcing myself to focus, to believe, to continue, I realized I was utterly alone, alone in the depths. Alone with my fear. Alone with what I had done or not done. I told myself he surfaced later. I told Lena the same. And maybe, it's true, maybe, but deep down, I knew the truth was different. Something in the water had claimed him, or perhaps I had, and that's how it started. The descent into darkness, both around me and inside me, from which there was no easy return. The water feels different now, heavier, or maybe it's me. I don't know how long I had been down there when I noticed the first signs that something was off, not the usual unease, not the creeping cold that always settles in your bones at depth. No, this was different. The currents moved against me in unnatural patterns, tugging at my suit and mask, like I forced myself to breathe, to think. Maybe she panicked. Maybe she swam upward. I wanted to believe it, needed to believe it, because the alternative, accepting that she was gone, was unbearable. But as the silt settled, I realized I was entirely alone. Not a flicker of Lena, not a trace of Mark, nothing but the cable and the oppressive darkness. And then I saw it. Something moving along the cable, a ripple, a curve, like a living thing. I couldn't identify what it was. My mind screamed that it was impossible, yet my eyes refused to lie. I reached out, and the movement recoiled, as if it knew I was watching. My heart hammered, and I realized I couldn't tell if it was alive, or a trick of my own paranoia. My hands shook violently. I couldn't hold on to the tools, couldn't focus on the repair, couldn't even focus on breathing. The hum grew louder, resonating through my chest. I panicked, clawing at the cable, desperate to finish, desperate to escape. And in that moment, clarity or something like it hit me. I didn't know what was real. Lena may have vanished, Mark may have never surfaced, and maybe I had imagined them all. Maybe they had never existed, except as ghosts conjured by guilt and obsession. Why am I still down here? I whispered into the silence. No response. Not even the cable responded. Only the hum growing louder, vibrating against my bones, and yet I couldn't leave. Something compelled me, whispered in my ear, or was it my own conscience? To finish the task, to repair the cable, to face whatever waited in the deep. My hands moved mechanically, attaching connectors, checking lines, even as shadows flickered behind my mask, crawling along the edges of my vision. Then came the first tug, gentle, deliberate, almost patient. Something had latched onto the cable, pulling against my suit, my chest constricted. I turned, expecting to see Lena or Mark or anything. Nothing. Just black curling around me like ink. I clung to the cable, trying to force myself to remember what was real. My training, my years underwater, my confidence, they all dissolved under the pressure, leaving only fear, isolation, and that terrible, knowing hum. I kept telling myself I was fine. I had to routine, repair, safety. The words tasted like ash in my mouth, hollow and bitter. But beneath them, I knew nothing here was routine, and nothing here was safe. And in the dark, I realized something more terrifying than the water, more terrifying than the isolation, more terrifying than the cable itself. I wasn't sure I even wanted to survive. I think the water is talking to me, or maybe it's just me talking to myself. Alone. That word had never felt so heavy. Lena, Mark gone. Or maybe they had never been there at all. The cable stretched out beneath me like a black vein, pulsing with that low, insistent hum. I told myself it was electrical interference. I told myself it was my imagination. But deep down, I knew it was something else. Something alive, something aware. I kept my log camera running, hoping that if anyone ever saw it, they'd understand. Or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they'd think I was insane, hallucinating in the depths. Maybe I was. Maybe I wanted them to think that. I followed the cable, eyes wide, heart hammering. And then I saw it something impossible. A structure ancient and encrusted with coral and the detritus of centuries, rising from the ocean floor like the ribcage of a buried giant. My dive light barely pierced its dark contours, but I could see carvings, or were they scratches, along the walls. Patterns, symbols, faces that stared with hollow eyes. My chest tightened. I shouldn't have been seeing this. Nothing should be here. The cable, it didn't belong to this structure. Or did it? I couldn't tell anymore. I reached out, tracing the ridges with my gloved hand. The stone was cold, impossibly smooth in places, and when my fingers touched certain marks, the hum intensified. It vibrated through my suit, through my bones, into my chest. I staggered, clawing at the cable to stabilize myself, my lungs burning, and then I heard it. A voice, a signal. Hard to tell, hard to decipher, but it threaded through the water, weaving into my thoughts. Low, melodic, insistent. It whispered my name, or something close enough to my name to fool my mind. I jerked my head, trying to locate the source, but nothing moved. Nothing. Just the structure, the cable, and me, alone and trembling. Alex? My own voice echoed back at me, distorted through the helmet mic, but it didn't feel like me. It felt older, deeper, almost mocking. My hands shook as I activated the camera light, scanning every shadow. Shapes shifted in the periphery. I turned too fast. Nothing. Yet I felt eyes on me. Not human eyes. Something else. Waiting. I tried to repair the cable again, forcing my hands to move despite the panic surging through my chest. The connectors slipped, tools dropped. I muttered curses into the mic, hoping someone above would hear, someone would see. But no one was there. No one had ever been there. My mind tried to fill in the gaps. Mark, Lena, they were echoes. Memories of a safer, simpler mission that never truly existed. Or maybe I had erased them from reality myself. I couldn't tell. Signal grew stronger, vibrating through the cable and into the floor beneath me. I followed it, dragging the cable with me as if it were a lifeline, and I realized it wasn't a cable at all. It was a conduit, a bridge. I don't know to what or to whom. But something was communicating through it, calling, testing. I could feel it in my chest, in my skull, twisting my thoughts. The pressure wasn't just water anymore. It was the pull of something ancient, alien, patient. I screamed into my regulator, the sound muffled, swallowed by the water. What do you want from me? The echo answered, but not in words I could understand. Just the pulsing faster, wrapping around me, insinuating itself into my fear. My vision blurred. Shadows began to move independently of the lights, curling and stretching in impossible ways. And then I saw them, I think. Figures flickering at the edge of my vision, moving just beyond the reach of the camera light. Faces or masks staring with blank, endless eyes. I turned quickly, pointing my torch. They vanished. A trick of the light. Hallucinations? Of course, it had to be. But my chest felt hollow, my lungs tight, my mind screaming that it was real. It had to be. I don't know if anyone else was real, or if I wanted them gone, I whispered, the words tasting of guilt and despair. And maybe they were gone. Or maybe I had gone mad and imagined them from the start. The line between memory and hallucination blurred. The cable pulsed beneath my hands like a heartbeat, alive in a way that terrified me. Alive and aware, watching, waiting. A sudden surge of electricity arced along the cable. My hands were thrown back violently, tools spinning away into the black. The hum became a shriek, a living thing screaming in my mind. I hit the floor of the ocean, clutching the cable, as if my life depended on it, because it did. My regulator sputtered. My lungs screamed. I could feel the pressure twist, warp, pressing not just against my body, but into my very thoughts. I don't remember what happened next. Only that when I opened my eyes again, I was crawling along the seabed, the hum reduced to a low, insistent pulse. The structure loomed above me, massive and indifferent. Shadows crept along its walls. The cable stretched endlessly behind me, and I realized something that should have terrified me even more. I wasn't alone. The investigators exchanged glances, one step closer. We need a full account. We found no one else on board. No signs of a dive besides you. I froze. Their words didn't make sense. Mark? Lena? They had been there, hadn't they? I could still see them in the water, hear their panicked breathing, feel their hands brush mine. Or had I imagined it all? My mind recoiled at the thought. If I'd been alone the entire time, then what had been down there? What had been guiding? Me speaking to me through the cable, whispering my name in the hum that had drilled into my skull. I tried to explain, fumbling, stammering, pointing toward the horizon where the cable disappeared into the waves. It's alive, it communicates, it was calling me. My voice cracked, my confession felt hollow, even to me. I didn't know if I believed it. Maybe it was the trauma. Maybe the pressure had finally snapped my mind. One of the investigators scribbled notes. The cable is intact, no signs of tampering. You claim there was a structure? Yes, ancient, massive, covered in growths. Symbols, faces. My arms flailed, gesturing at nothing. You have to believe me. They didn't. Of course they didn't. Who would? I was drenched, shaking, talking about shadows and whispers in the deep. I could barely convince myself, but I couldn't lie entirely. Not about the feeling, not about the presence, not about the way the water itself had pressed into my mind. And then it came a pulse, faint but unmistakable from the cable still anchored somewhere below. I froze. The investigators glanced at me, eyebrows raised. I said nothing. Who would? Believe it? They couldn't see it, couldn't hear the hum threading through my thoughts, tugging, pulling me backward toward the abyss. I swallowed hard and tried to step away. My legs wobbled. I thought I was free. The surface, the sun, the investigators, they should have saved me. But nothing could save me from what I had felt, what I had done or failed to do. Guilt and fear tangled in my chest, thick and unyielding. Did I cause their disappearance? Did I abandon them? Or had they never existed at all? The questions didn't have answers. And the answers that might have existed were buried in the depths, along with the cable, along with the whispering structure that had called my name. Later in the dry, sterile room of the investigation vessel, they asked for details, times, depths, logs. I gave them numbers. I described repairs, I recounted conversations, but everything was fragmented, hazy, untrustworthy. I left out what I had to because some truths, when spoken, are dangerous. Or because I didn't want to admit them. Or because admitting them would mean accepting my own culpability. I couldn't distinguish which reason was real. And then there were the flashes, the reflections in the water on the boat's surface. Sometimes I swear I saw a face not my own, staring up at me, lips moving silently. The investigators noticed. Nothing, of course, only I could see it. Only I could hear the hum threading through the waves, lingering, patient, waiting. Night fell. The water darkened, swallowing the boat and the horizon. I sat alone on deck, the cold settling into my bones, and I realized that the surface offered no reprieve. The cable stretched down into the blackness, invisible but present. The structure waited somewhere below, and the hum, the terrible, insistent hum, still pulsed in my chest. I had survived, but at what cost? I reached for the radio, desperate for connection, for confirmation that someone else existed, that someone else had survived. Static greeted me, and then a single, low pulse vibrated through the hull, syncing with the rhythm of my heartbeat. I dropped the microphone. My reflection in the water shimmered, distorted, not entirely my own. The eyes staring back at me seemed older, wiser, knowing. Or perhaps they were mine, and I had simply never seen myself so clearly before. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I was trapped in the aftermath, and the guilt, and the memory, or hallucination of what had happened below. The investigators called my name, concerned, cautious, unsure. I looked at them, their faces blurred, becoming shadows that stretched and bent, twisting as if the deep had followed me to the surface. I thought I understood the mission, the repair, the reason we went down. I thought I knew the routine, but I had been wrong. The depths had changed me, or maybe revealed me. And I knew that the signal, the pull, the hum, the presence would never let me rest. Not fully, not ever, because it isn't just down there. It's inside me. It's in every memory, every hesitation, every whispered thought. And one day, maybe it will call again. I stare at the water and I wonder, was I chosen or was I simply left? Story number 3. I should have known the ice was alive the moment it whispered my name, but no one else heard it. I should have known the ice was alive the moment it whispered my name, but no one else heard it. I know how that sounds. Crazy, even. But listen, The silence here isn't quiet in the usual sense. It hums, trembles, and sometimes, if you strain your ears, it screams. I was stationed here in northern Greenland, a place so remote that even the wind feels like it belongs to something else. My job, geologist, drill into the permafrost, extract samples frozen for thousands of years. Easy work on paper. Dangerous, terrifying, and alive in practice. The camp was small, 10 tents and a cluster of machines, all dwarfed by the endless white of ice stretching to the horizon. The sun barely touched the snow, low and weak, casting long, cold shadows that crept like living things. It was beautiful, but beautiful in the same way a predator is beautiful, deceptively so. I could see why the others had been warned. Isolation in Greenland isn't just physical, it burrows into your mind. We started drilling into a section that glowed faintly under the weak sun, a frozen ridge untouched by humans. At first it was mechanical hums and metal grinding against ice. Then came the tremors. Nothing violent, just subtle shakes beneath our boots, vibrations that seemed to resonate directly inside the chest. The other crew members laughed nervously. Permafrost settling, one said. But my heart told me otherwise. I remember staring at the drill head as it bored deeper, metal teeth grinding against layers that had never seen sunlight. Something moved, or maybe something watched. Shadows flickered across the snow where there shouldn't have been any. The ice whispered again, just beneath the edge of hearing. I froze. Did you hear that? I asked the first crew member, Lars, whose calm, pale face was half hidden beneath his fur-lined hood. Hear what? He said, eyes squinting. It's just the wind. There's nothing else out here. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because I knew he wouldn't hear it. None of them would. Only I did. And the thought made the isolation feel heavier, like I'd been left alone in a world of ghosts. We worked in silence after that, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes every heartbeat sound like a cannon. I watched the frost crawl along the machines in jagged crystals, as if the ice itself was moving toward us, impatient, alive. I felt its eyes on me, the way a predator studies prey before striking. And the deeper the drill went, the more the ice seemed to respond. Tremors grew. Small cracks formed around the drill site. The snow didn't just fall, it shivered, like a living membrane stretched over something below doubt at night. Inside the cramped warmth of my tent, I could still hear it. Whispers that felt like my own name, carried across the frozen plains. The others slept, oblivious, or pretended to. I couldn't. My mind replayed everything. The tremors, the shadows, the unnatural hum of the ice. I pulled my notebook from my backpack, writing obsessively, sketching the drill site, the patterns in the frost, every anomaly. Every time I looked outside, the horizon seemed closer, compressing as though the world itself was shrinking around. Lars came by my tent at some point, wrapped in layers and breathing heavily. You should sleep, he said. But the way he said it, hollow, careful, it told me he knew I hadn't been dreaming. That maybe he had heard something too. I shrugged, too tired to explain, too afraid to doubt by morning the ice had changed. Small. Fissures now ran like veins across the frozen ridge. When the drill pierced the next layer, there was a low, resonant moan. It wasn't the machine. It wasn't the wind. It was something else entirely. I pressed my ear to the cold metal, expecting the sound to vanish, but it only grew louder, more insistent, almost sentient. Did you hear that? I asked again. Yeah, probably the drill, Lars said, and I caught the flicker of doubt in his eyes, but I didn't tell him what I was hearing, not yet. How could I explain that the ice itself seemed to breathe, to respond, to remember things long buried beneath its frozen skin? The wind rose suddenly, harsh and biting, slamming tents and machines with shards of frost. Shadows leapt across the snow, forming shapes that shouldn't exist. I swear I saw the outline of a face pressed beneath the ice, staring at us from within the permafrost, expression twisted in silent agony. I blinked, and it was gone. But I could still feel it watching, and I knew in the marrow of my bones that whatever lay beneath that ice was awake, waiting, and I wasn't sure if it was watching just me or if it had been waiting for all of us. Long before we arrived by the time we packed up for the day, Lars avoided my gaze. The other crew members joked nervously about hallucinations, frostbite, and the isolation messing with our heads. But I knew the truth. The ice had screamed, and it had spoken only to me. I didn't tell anyone yet. Not until I understood what it wanted. It moved before we even saw it. Not a shadow, not a crack in the ice. Something alive beneath everything we thought we knew. The morning after the tremors, the ridge felt different, as if the air itself had thickened, and the snow was holding its breath. We returned to the drill site, the machines groaning under layers of frost, the wind whistling through jagged ice. Formations like a warning. I could feel the fissures beneath my boots, the vibrations running up my legs. Lars walked beside me, silent. His eyes darted constantly to the cracked ice, the frozen veins we had noticed the day before. I wanted to tell him what I had seen in the snow, what I had heard in the whispers, but I didn't. Not yet. The drill bit hit the next layer, a strange gelatinous substance unlike any permafrost we had studied. It was dark, viscous, almost black. In the weak sunlight, and it pulsed faintly, like it had a heartbeat of its own. My stomach turned, but I leaned closer, fascinated. The others hesitated. "Is that ice?" Lars asked cautiously, voice trembling. "It doesn't look like ice." "It's ancient," I whispered, though I didn't fully understand why I said it aloud. "Older than anything we've catalogued." I pressed the edge of my gloved hand against it, and it recoiled slightly, like a living creature. The sensation sent a shiver down my spine. The wind carried a low moan across the ridge, mingling with the mechanical grinding of the drill, creating a sound that felt mournful. The others glanced at one another, unease settling over the team. By the second hour, strange visions began to blur my perception of reality. I could see shapes moving beneath the gelatinous layer, patterns forming that resembled faces twisted, and silent screams. Was it hallucination? Frostbite? Or was the ice trying to communicate, imprinting its history onto my mind? I couldn't tell. I dared not speak, but my hands shook as I scribbled furiously in my notebook. Diagrams of the pulsing layer, sketches of faces that may or may not have existed. "Why do you keep staring at it?" Lars asked, voice tight. He was standing. Too close, but his eyes held fear I couldn't ignore. "It's just ice, okay?" I forced a smile, though I knew it looked strained. "No," I said softly. "It's not just ice. And it's not just beneath the surface, it's watching us." He laughed nervously, the sound brittle. "Watching us? You need sleep, man. We've been up here for days. Isolation messes with the mind." But I wasn't imagining it. I could feel eyes beneath the permafrost, probing, studying, staring at the gelatinous layer as though he could will it to stop. I envied him in that moment. He didn't hear the whispers, didn't see the faces. But I couldn't escape it. I wanted to warn the others, but the words felt meaningless. How do you explain something that shouldn't exist that no one else can perceive? Night fell quickly, heavier than expected. Tents and machines were now just dark silhouettes against the endless white. The wind carried faint voices across the ridge, and I knew one thing. This layer, this thing beneath the ice, was alive, waiting, and it had learned to speak through me. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about Henrik, about the shadows, about the pulse beneath the drill that throbbed like a heartbeat. The gelatinous layer wasn't just permafrost. It was a memory, a predator, a secret that should never have been uncovered, and I knew deep down that waking the ice was only the beginning. It hit something solid, and the sound wasn't metal on ice, it was a scream from beneath the world, a voice that shouldn't exist. The drill had gone deeper than any of us expected. The gelatinous layer was only the surface, a thin veil over something far older, far darker. I watched the metal teeth bite into the ice, sparks of frost flying, and the vibration beneath my feet turned into a rhythm irregular, alive, almost deliberate. Lars didn't speak. He hadn't for hours. His eyes were wide, darting to every shadow, every tremor, as if the ice itself might swallow him whole, and maybe it would. The moment the drill pierced the next layer, the ridge quaked violently. Not the gentle tremor from before, this was different, deliberate. I stumbled backward, gripping the metal casing for support. From deep below, a sound rose. Low at first, almost imperceptible. Then a resonance that shook my chest and rattled teeth in their sockets. It was a scream, yes, but not human on animal. Something alive, something angry, stopped the drill. Lars shouted, panic finally breaking through his stoic mask. I can't. I yelled. The compulsion had me in its grip. I couldn't stop. Not now. The pulse beneath the drill called to me. It vibrated in my skull, whispered through my bones, and I felt drawn toward it, unable to resist. Every instinct in me screamed to run, but I couldn't leave not when the ice was alive. Waiting and speaking through me, the fissures widened rapidly. Shadows pooled and stretched across the snow, moving against the wind, against the light, against physics itself. I saw faces pressed against the ice walls, screaming silently, mouths opening in vain, eyes hollow and accusing. Were they hallucinations? Or warnings? I couldn't tell. The line between the ice's memory and my own fractured mind was gone. Henrik had disappeared earlier, and now Lars was trembling beside me. We have to leave. This is insane, he cried. But even as he spoke, the ice pulsed beneath our boots, rippling like liquid obsidian. And then I realized there were shapes in the drill shaft itself, dark forms pressed against the metal like hands, trying to emerge. I leaned closer. My breath fogged the cold air, mixing with the faint sulfurous smell rising from the fissures. The shadows shifted, writhing, and a shape emerged solid, yet translucent. A humanoid silhouette etched in frost and shadow. It had no face, but its presence was unmistakable. Watching, judging, waiting. You see it, right? I whispered, not even sure if I wanted an answer. Lars shook violently. I don't know. I can't. He stumbled back, tripping over equipment. I reached out, drawn to the figure as though by magnetism. My fingers brushed the frost, and a jolt shot up my arm. Memories or visions flooded my mind. I saw a landscape not of Greenland, but something older, darker. Forests frozen into ice. Creatures with hollow eyes, voices screaming silently. And then I saw myself, or someone like me in a previous era, drilling into the same ice, repeating the same mistakes. I gasped, stumbling backward, heart racing. Was it a memory? Or a warning? The drill shuddered violently, metal groaning against the ice, sparks flying. A tremor rocked the ridge, and I fell, sliding toward the fissures. Shadows leapt from the fractures, coalescing into forms that mirrored us, myself, Lars, even Henrik twisted, grotesque, staring at me with hollow eyes. And the whispering returned, this time louder, overlapping. You shouldn't have come. You shouldn't have touched it. I shouted, tried to grab Lars, tried to pull him away, but the fissures were growing, swallowing everything in their path. My vision blurred. The wind screamed through the cracks like a chorus of angry spirits, and I could feel the ice itself tightening around us. The entity beneath had awoken fully, And now it was interacting not passively, but deliberately. For a brief, horrifying moment, I thought I saw Lars's face dissolve into the shadows. His scream echoed mine, though I wasn't sure if it was his or my own. I felt hands or the suggestion of hands grasping at my legs, the drill vibrating violently underfoot, pulling me toward the abyss. And in that instant, I realized I might not be seeing reality. I might be seeing the ice's memory, the echo of all who had come before us and all who had failed. I screamed too, not just out of fear, but out of recognition. The ice was alive, and it knew me. Knew my guilt, my obsession, my compulsion to uncover secrets buried for millennia. It was using me, shaping me, testing me. And somehow I knew I was failing. The ridge fell silent abruptly, the kind of silence that feels wrong, like holding a breath too long. The shadows withdrew, but the pulse remained beneath the drill, a slow, steady heartbeat, calling me back, whispering my name in a way I cannot explain. Lars lay prone, trembling, staring at nothing. I crouched beside him, hands shaking, unable to tear my eyes away from the fissures, from the dark layer beneath the ice that now felt infinite, alive and patient. I don't know if the others will survive this. I don't even know if I will. But I do know this. Whatever we've awoken beneath the ice, it isn't done with us. And it never will be Dot. We leave the ridge tomorrow. Or maybe it will leave us Dot. I don't know if I'm alone. Or if I've ever been alone. The ice watches, the ice waits, and maybe I am part of it now. The ridge was silent when we awoke, or at least it seemed silent. Silence here is deceptive, like a heavy blanket suffocating sound, muting it, twisting it. I looked around the camp. Lars was gone. The equipment was half buried in fresh snow, frost creeping like veins across metal. Only the drill remained, still humming faintly, pulsating beneath the frozen ground as though it had its own heartbeat. I wanted to call for Lars. I wanted to tell him it was over, that we should leave. But the sound caught in my throat, twisted by fear, by obsession, by something older and darker than the ice itself. There was no escape. There never had been. The gelatinous layer, the entity, had fully emerged. Not physically, not entirely, but it was alive beneath everything, beneath the drill, beneath the snow, beneath me. The fissures snaked across the ridge, pulsating faintly, glowing faint green in the weak polar light. Every tremor now felt deliberate, as if the ice itself had a consciousness, as if it was studying me. Probing my mind, thought I remember the moment it spoke, or I think it spoke. Perhaps I imagined it, or perhaps I don't know how long I wandered, or if it was minutes, hours, or days. Time here has no meaning. The sun barely shifts, the shadows bend unnaturally, and the wind carries voices that sound like laughter, crying, and screaming all at once. I tried calling out, tried tracing my steps back, but every path led me to the same fissures, the same pulsating layer, the same whispering entity beneath the drill dot, and then I understood. I wasn't being hunted. I was already part of it. But ice had claimed me, not with violence, but with knowledge, with memory, with obsession. It existed beyond my perception, yet inside me, entwined with every thought, every heartbeat. I am its observer, its recorder, its vessel, and it waits patient, eternal for the next mistake, the next curious mind, the next hand willing to touch what shouldn't exist. I write this now, to whoever finds it, to whoever will listen. But I cannot promise it is real, or that I am real. Perhaps this is all a story my mind has constructed to survive, or perhaps the ice is whispering through me. I cannot tell. Outside, the fissures pulse faintly like a heartbeat in the snow. Shadows shift across the ridge, and I feel eyes, countless eyes, upon me. I reach for the drill, half to measure, half to understand, and feel the vibration thrumming beneath my hands, reminding me that I am not alone. That I never was, and I know this. The ice remembers. It waits, and whatever we awaken will never stop watching. I should leave. I should run. But I can't, because I am already beneath the ice in its pulse, in its memory, and soon perhaps I won't even remember that I ever lived. Carries a whisper again, faint and insistent. You shouldn't have come. And maybe I shouldn't have asterisk, 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 story number 4. I thought we were alone under the ice. But the sonar picked up something that shouldn't exist, and the captain told me to ignore it. I didn't listen, but maybe I should have. I thought we were alone under the ice, but the sonar picked up something that shouldn't exist, and the captain told me to ignore it. I didn't listen, but maybe I should have. That was the first thing I remember saying to anyone after the mission. Now, sitting here, staring at the camera, I'm not sure if it's the truth or just what I tell myself to sleep at night. The truth. The truth is slippery, and I've been chasing it ever since. We were 300 meters under the Arctic. Ice in a metal tube that shivered with every movement of the ice above. I can still feel it, the cold biting through the steel, like the ocean itself was pressing in on us. The captain, stern, unyielding, always a few steps ahead, gave orders with clipped precision. But even he didn't seem comfortable down there. There was something in the water that night, though none of us wanted to admit it. It started with a ping on the sonar. A tiny blip at first, almost like static, something that shouldn't have been there. I leaned closer, squinting at the screen, trying to make sense of it. "Captain," I whispered, because even in the metallic hum of the submarine, my voice felt intrusive. "There's something down there. I think it's moving." He didn't look at me, didn't even flinch. "Ignore it," he said. His voice was calm, deliberate, the kind that doesn't leave room for argument. "Nothing down there that can hurt us. Keep the course steady." But I couldn't ignore it. Something about the movement, too smooth, too deliberate, didn't match any ice formation, whale, or undersea current I'd ever seen. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself I was tired, imagining things. But the blip on the screen kept moving, creeping closer, always just beyond what we could confirm. The corridors of the submarine were narrow, suffocating. Each step echoed through the hull, a metallic thrum that made my skin crawl. I passed the sonar room a dozen times, telling myself I was just checking the readings. The captain never questioned it, but the way he avoided my gaze, it was like he knew something I didn't. Or maybe I knew something I wasn't admitting to myself. I scratched against the hull above us, tiny fissures forming in the opaque blanket of the Arctic. Shadows danced along the portholes, distorted by the murky water and the dim light of our instruments. I pressed my face to the glass once, imagining the shapes moving outside, vast, dark silhouettes gliding just beyond reach. I told myself they were tricks of light, but the unease had already settled in, thick and suffocating. I tried to talk to the captain again. "It's large," I said, my voice betraying more panic than I intended. "It's following us, or waiting." He turned to me then, for the briefest moment, eyes sharp, unreadable. "Don't feed the fear, Lieutenant. Focus on what you can control." His words should have calmed me, but instead, they made my chest tighten. What did he mean by that? Was he lying? Or was I imagining things? I left the sonar room, pacing the narrow halls, counting the pings, the crackle of ice against steel, the creaks and groans of the submarine as if it were alive. Every sound became a potential threat. Every shadow, a predator waiting just beyond our thin metal walls. I told myself I was being rational, that fear was a tool, not a curse. But late at night, when the hum of the engines matched the beat of my heart, rationality became a distant memory. I spoke into the camera now because I need someone to understand what happened. Not the sanitized reports, not the debriefs we were forced to sign. The truth. The truth is buried under layers of ice, of guilt, of fear. And even now, I don't know if I'm remembering it right. Maybe my mind has already rewritten it, shaping reality to survive. The captain was the first to disappear, or at least that's what I tell myself. One moment he was there, issuing orders, and the next, the sonar registered nothing. Silence. The crew as I remember, were just shadows too, blurring at the edges of my memory. I replayed those pings in my head, imagining movement just beyond the sensors, feeling the weight of something massive pressing down on us. Every time I close my eyes, I see it, a dark, endless shape, moving beneath the ice, patient, observing. I wasn't supposed to see it. I wasn't supposed to speak of it. And yet, here I am, confessing everything I can remember. But even now, I leave things out because some truths are too heavy to bear. Some details. You only realize too late that you've already told a lie by omission. The first night under the ice taught me that the ocean is not just cold, it's infinite. And in its depth, it doesn't forgive mistakes. It waits, it watches. And sometimes it moves when you least expect it. So yes, I saw something that shouldn't exist. I ignored orders. I lied to the captain and to myself. And maybe, just maybe, I should have listened. It started moving faster that night. Or maybe I was just imagining it. I can't tell anymore. The thing about being alone under the ice is that your mind starts to fill in the blanks. Every ping on the sonar became a heartbeat. Every creak of the hull, a warning. And when Ensign Rourke arrived on the sonar deck, I thought maybe, just maybe, I wasn't losing my mind entirely. Rourke was new, fresh-faced, the kind of person who still believed in facts, in measurements, in reports that could be filed neatly. He leaned over the console beside me, squinting at the blips I'd been obsessively watching. "What is that?" he asked, voice low, eyes flicking nervously toward the darkened windows. I hesitated. I wanted to say it was nothing, just a glitch, just ice shifting under the weight of the Arctic. But the truth was worse. "Something moving under the hull," I said, my own words tasting wrong in my mouth. I tried to make it sound clinical, detached, but even I could hear the panic rising. He frowned, tracing a finger along the glowing sonar lines. "It doesn't match any known object. The captain would have noticed if it was natural." I didn't tell him the part that gnawed at my gut, that the movement seemed intelligent. Like it was avoiding us, calculating, waiting. I didn't tell him about the shadow I thought I saw flick past the porthole, or the way the metal walls vibrated in a rhythm that almost but not quite matched our engines. I kept that to myself. For now, the captain's orders were clear. Stay on course, ignore anomalies, report nothing unnecessary. But standing there with Rourke, I realized how easily the rules could be broken when fear became a living thing in the room. I wanted to warn him, to confess what I'd seen, but my own memory felt like a shifting ice flow, unreliable, slippery. Had I seen it before, or was it only in my head? "I don't like it," Rourke said after a long pause, tapping the console nervously. "It's too precise, too deliberate." I wanted to nod, to agree, but I couldn't, because I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. Maybe I was projecting, twisting reality because I'd spent too many hours alone, staring at sonar blips that didn't obey logic. I wanted to tell him it was nothing. I wanted to be rational. But deep down, I knew that whatever it wasn't nothing. The submarine groaned, the hull shuddering as the ice above us shifted. Shadows danced across the walls, warped by the dim red lighting. I told myself it was just the reflection of the instruments, a trick of perspective. But when I glanced at Rourke, I could see it mirrored in his eyes too. A flicker of fear that didn't belong to the sonar alone. We spent hours tracking the blip, arguing over coordinates and speed, our voices a mixture of tension and frustration. "We can't stop the mission for this," I said, trying to sound like I still had control. But control had already slipped through my fingers. I could feel it, an invisible hand tightening around my chest. Every ping was a reminder that we weren't alone. Every shadow a warning. Warning. I started noticing other things I could never fully explain. Tools shifted on their own. Corridors seemed longer than they should have been. Turning corners I knew led back to the same room into unfamiliar passages. Rourke noticed it too, or maybe I convinced him he did. I'm not sure anymore. Memory is treacherous down here, Dot, at one point. I swear I heard the captain's voice in the corridors, whispering instructions I had never heard before. "Stay calm. Ignore it." The words echoed, distorted, and I ran to check. But he was in his quarters, asleep or pretending to be. Was it him? Was it the thing beneath the ice? Or was it my own mind unraveling under the pressure? Rourke's hand brushed mine as he pointed at the sonar again. "Look," he said, voice tight. "It's moving directly beneath the hull." "No, wait, it's circling." I froze. Circling. That's when the realization hit me. This wasn't random. It wasn't ice or a whale or some glitch in the sensors. It was deliberate, calculated, watching, waiting, and the longer we stared, the closer it seemed to come. Hours bled into each other, the red glow of the sonar painting ghostly reflections across the walls. I found myself confiding in Rourke in whispers, half-truths, leaving crucial details unsaid. I could see him believing me, partly, but I could also see doubt creeping in, the rational part of his mind refusing to accept what he could neither see nor touch. Dot by the end of the night. Exhaustion had dulled our senses, but the unease hadn't abated. The blip vanished suddenly, leaving a silence that was worse than any movement. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt an emptiness, a gnawing certainty that it was still there, just beyond our perception, waiting for us to let our guard down. I can't explain everything that happened after that. Shadows in corridors, whispers that weren't there, reflections that weren't ours. All I know is that I didn't sleep. Not for a second. And Rourke, he didn't leave my side, watching the monitors with a quiet, growing fear that mirrored my own. I left the sonar deck for a moment, pressed my face to the porthole again, and for a brief second, I thought I saw it, a shape moving far below, vast and dark, intelligent. Then it was gone. Or perhaps it was always gone and I only imagined it. Whatever it was, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: we were not alone. And whatever waited below the ice, it was patient and it was watching us. I can't tell you exactly when it started feeling alive. The sonar blip, the shadow, it became more than just a reading. It became intent. By the third day under the ice, the crew was fraying. I could see it in the tension etched across Rourke's face, in the captain's clipped orders, and in the quiet resignation of the engineers who barely spoke. I too was fraying, though I would never admit it fully, not even to myself. Every step through those narrow corridors felt like stepping further into a trap of our own making or something waiting beneath the ice. The anomaly returned with a vengeance. It moved faster now, erratically, almost taunting us. Every ping on the sonar was a jolt of panic, each one closer, circling beneath the submarine in patterns that defied logic. I tried to convince myself it was a mechanical error, a glitch, or a trick of the frozen currents. But even as I said it, I knew the truth. Something down there was alive, intelligent, and aware of us. Dot. It was then that Lieutenant Marlowe came onto the deck. I hadn't noticed her before, perhaps because I was too busy obsessing over the blip. Marlowe was calm, methodical, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. She glanced at the sonar and said nothing at first, as if reading the fear in the room was enough. "Something is tracking us," she finally said, voice low, almost clinical. "Or it's learning our patterns." I wanted to agree, but my mind scrambled for rationality. It could just be the ice. Reflections, sonar artifacts, I muttered. But Marlowe's gaze pinned me, unyielding. She knew I was lying, or at least omitting truths that even I couldn't fully confront. Rourke tried to maintain logic. The sonar patterns are deliberate, he said, pointing at the glowing blips. I've run calculations. If this were a whale, it wouldn't move like this. Not with that speed. Not with coordination. I didn't want to look, because when I did, the shapes seemed to move faster, flickering at the edge of reality like a predator's eyes glimpsed through shadows. The corridor lights flickered, and I swear, just for a heartbeat, the captain's shadow appeared at the corner, watching us. But when I turned, he was in the control room, as if nothing had moved. Or maybe I was imagining it. Arguments began to flare. Small, tense exchanges at first, who was responsible for navigation, whether we should surface or continue, but they spiraled quickly. Marlowe accused Rourke of panicking, Rourke accused me of exaggerating, and I accused all of us of ignoring the threat. The narrow hallways became echo chambers of fear, each word ricocheting, intensifying the claustrophobia. I began noticing inconsistencies. Rourke would swear he'd seen a door where none existed. Marlowe would mention footsteps behind us when the corridors were empty. And me, I heard the whispers again, but I wasn't sure whose they were. Mine? The captain's? Or something else? My memory fractured in the dim light, each moment folding into the next like ice layers beneath the ocean. During a routine check, I went to the sonar room alone. The screen blinked erratically, the blip now circling like a predator calculating its strike. I pressed my hand to the console, willing it to make sense, willing it to be wrong. And then I saw it, a shadow, vast and dark, moving beneath the ice in a way that defied the laws of physics. Gliding silently, almost with intent, I wanted to call Marlowe. I wanted to call Rourke, but my throat closed. Because if they saw it the way I did, would they survive the realization? Would I? And then the lights flickered. A low hum thrummed through the submarine, vibrating through metal and bone. Every instrument quivered, every shadow seemed to stretch toward us. Rourke's voice came first, sharp with fear. It's here beneath us. The captain appeared behind us suddenly, his calm demeanor gone. Enough! He barked, but his voice didn't carry authority, it carried fear. His eyes, wide and unsteady, betrayed what he'd been hiding. He knew more than he let on, or perhaps he had seen something worse. Something he didn't dare name. We scrambled to verify the sonar, our hands trembling. The anomaly disappeared in an instant, leaving the screen blank, the silence heavier than any noise. But I could feel it deep in the marrow of my bones. It hadn't gone. It had only paused, waiting. And I knew in that moment that whatever it was, it had learned our patterns, our weaknesses, and it was patient. The crew's cohesion fractured completely. Marlowe and Rourke exchanged glances that held more questions than answers. The captain retreated to his quarters, muttering orders to himself. And I stayed near the sonar, staring at the screen, unable to turn away. Part of me wanted to flee. Part of me wanted to confront it. But mostly, I wanted to understand, because the truth, whatever it was, wasn't just beneath the ice, it was inside me too. My mind, my memory